Forgiveness is the access point out of resentment. But what is the access point for forgiveness when it feels like it would be wrong to forgive that person, when you just feel so resentful because holding on to that resentment, at least you're not making it okay what they did. See, here's the thing with resentment, when you continue to hold on to resentment, it not only affects them, it actually affects you. In fact, it affects you more than it affects the other person. See, forgiveness, it is actually the gift that we give ourselves. But how do we access that? Well, number one, you've got to be willing to get the impact that it has. See, we have so much resentment in the world. Resentment upon resentment. On an interpersonal level, in relationships, one-on-one between people, resentment there. Marriages, friendships, family resentment, historical family resentment. We have resentment at the level of communities. We have resentment at the level of cultures, between culture to culture. This ongoing historical resentment and story and pain that continues to play out. We have resentment country to country that manifests in war. You know, when we actually get the impact, like the real impact of holding on to resentment, sometimes it can shift us into a willingness to actually look at something new. See, here's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness does not say what you did was okay. It doesn't excuse what is happening or what happened. But it says you're willing to not suffer the pain ongoingly. It really is a gift you give yourself. But what is the access point? Understanding. If there's something that you've been holding on to with resentment, I invite you to have the courage, because it takes courage, to actually be willing to look at it and get into their shoes. Look out through their eyeballs and look at how are they seeing the world. How did they see the world at that time for them to have that viewpoint that they had, for them to do those actions that they did, for them to be however they showed up in that moment. I heard a story which it stayed with me. A mum had her little boy who was killed, he was murdered, and the guy who killed her son went to prison. The mum had lost her son, and she saw this guy who was in prison as someone else's son who was lost. Was she justified in holding on to anger, resentment? Hell yes. Could she have held on to that pain for the rest of her life? Absolutely. She wrote a letter to him and she said, "I forgive you." And she visited this guy in prison. And she visited him regularly because she realized that there was no one else there for him, and she wanted to change the pain. She realized that holding on to the resentment wasn't going to bring her son back. And she continued to visit this guy. This guy turned his life around because of the love that was shown to him. See, resentment doesn't pave the way for anything good to show up. Resentment creates more pain. When we're willing to actually be a stand for something new, we can alter the paradigms of what is there in our life. But it takes willingness, it takes courage, it takes total and utter strength to be able to look into someone else's life and actually see that perhaps they are doing the best with what they have. And when we can do that, we can make so much change in the world. You know, love is what is going to make the difference. I just honour all the people who have gone to the depths themselves and who have forgiven what is seemingly unforgivable. And I tell you what, every time I hold on to resentment with my husband or resentment with someone, or I'm in a story of pissed offness and frustration, I remember people like that woman who has been such a stand for love. and countless stories that I've heard of people rising above the seemingly unforgivable and who have stood in a place of love. And I have been reminded time and time and time again to just drop my petty shit and to also stand in a place of love, because that's what the world needs more of. If this message resonates with you, please share it with your friends. We need more messages of love rather than resentment. The news is full of resentment. We need to be the ones that are a stand for something so much greater. If you want help with accessing these tools yourself, head over to theexpansionprocess.com. It's a free video training which basically helps you move past your own internal patterning, which can have us just so much want to hold on to our stuckness. And make sure you subscribe for videos which remind you of your truth on a weekly basis. Thank you. See, we're not willing to go deeper into ourselves. Instead, we sit on the surface, skimming the top layer of who we are, and what gets reflected back is a surface relationship that's afraid to feel.